What's good, all you blurds, nerds, and everything in between? Yo, once again from the messy, swaggy studios that is my office apartment that is not fully put together, I am the swaggy blurred Winston A. Marshall, and you are here for another edition of the INNERGEEKDOM Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Man, oh man, it's been crazy, this wait for Loki and everything else like that. Like, I keep watching the trailer over and over and finding new little tidbits and things that I want to dive right into, but we're a couple weeks out from that. But fortunately, we keep getting all of this dope content that's dropping. Obviously, you saw my thoughts on Jupiter's Legacy, not my favorite superhero show that I've seen. But this week, I got a chance to dive headfirst into a supervillain show. Very a la Harley Quinn, Marvel has decided to do their own take on the animated supervillain romp, and we got Marvel's M.O.D.O.K that dropped on Hulu this past Friday, and I got a chance to check it out. Absolutely a phenomenal show. Greatest I've ever seen. I'm not gonna say all of that, but I had so much fun watching it, and the story is actually really well done and dives into family dynamics and all that kind of stuff. And we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna dive in, talk about what we think about Patton Oswalt and Seth Green's baby. Seth Green did executive produce the show. Patton Oswalt developed it and whatnot and stars in it. So we're going to get right into that. But of course, I had to bring on a guest that understood what was going on with M.O.D.O.K since Dwain. Shout out to Dwain Burke in the building. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I know you only had time because you worked like 15 jobs, like the mighty tour, the Jamaican God of Thunder. So, you didn't really have time to watch the whole season, but you got a chance to see a couple episodes, yeah?
Yeah, I got to watch the first two episodes. They were a little weird for me because I was like, this isn't M.O.D.O.K, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a chance. I'm gonna finish it out because I trust what Marvel's doing in TV right now, so I think that they know what they're doing with the characters.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
especially with the end of the second episode. There's a there's a M.O.D.O.K that people would be more familiar with, and
Right.
I want to see where that's going.
Okay, good. I'm glad to see that you're on board here. So again, I had to bring in somebody who knows what they're talking about. They know they're superheroes. They know they're film and TV, since they also work as a critic, whatnot in this space. I son him all the time and calling him my little internet brother, but he is proven time and time again that just because he's a little brother doesn't mean he won't sock a mother in the mouth intellectually. If he ever tried to lay hands on me, I would put him in the dirt. Anyway, I want to welcome back to the show, Mr. Matt Thomas. What's good, man?
Man, you always got to sum me, don't you? No matter what. It doesn't matter if it's my channel, if it's me coming on here, if it's me jumping on Roka's channel.
I just got to do it. It's part of the dynamic at this point. That's what they expect out of us if we're interacting at all. It's for me to just do that,
Yeah. Sure.
It's also just called paying your dues. Because I'm older than you by that amount of time, I'm allowed to do it every single time, sir. It's just how this works.
And I'm gonna keep torturing you with food porn from Cleveland. So
that's fair, man. That was terrible. Since my ass is eating nothing but salmon and broccoli, and you sending me these sandwiches, bro. That was just disrespectful as hell. I don't appreciate.
Oh, I know that was the point of it.
Well, welcome back to the INNERGEEKDOM Show, man. We're gonna dive right into M.O.D.O.K. But before we get started, I wanted to pose a question to y'all. Of course, shout out to all the podcast listeners. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to subscribe and send a 5-star review, whether you're listening to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to it. Let them know. That's how the sponsors find us. Say like, oh snap, they know what they're talking about. We should, throw money at them. So appreciate that. But send in your Streamlabs and Super Chats what you think about the show. And I also want to pose another question, whether or not you want to talk about M.O.D.O.K or not. I also want to know, what other supervillain would you like to see have their own show? Because again, we had Harley Quinn, and that show is amazing. And we're going to talk about M.O.D.O.K today. We've obviously had a few movies, so we don't talk about Catwoman. But, you had Joker. You had Suicide Squad kind of as the anti-heroes. What other supervillain would you like to see with their own TV show, similar to, it doesn't have to be animated, but similar to Harley Quinn and M.O.D.O.K, to see this other side? Because both of these shows do a really good job of not making them saints, but still humanizing these villains. You know what I mean? And that's the one thing that I really got out of this, is them humanizing M.O.D.O.K here. Other than he's still funny, but it reminded me a lot of kind of like Breaking Bad in a sense of like how Walter White is like really goofy as shit, but like, oops, there's my one for the day. Walter White is really goofy, but like is still able to like get the job done. And throughout this, we're watching M.O.D.O.K and remembering, oh yeah, this is like a supervillain that murders like it's nothing. You know what I mean? So what were your overall thoughts of the show, Matt, before we dive in?
I mean, you and I talked a little bit before the show. I loved the story. The story was engaging. It's not the traditional M.O.D.O.K you think of, like Dwain said, but overall, I still enjoyed it enough to warrant wanting to see more, especially with the ending that we had gotten. But the comedy didn't land for me at times. A lot of the time, honestly.
Fair.
Because you bring up Harley Quinn. It's a perfect comparison. It's a show that does similar things, but it lands better. So I want to see where this goes. I'm just hoping that the comedy is a little bit different.
Yeah. This to me was a mashup of, I mean, obviously because of the claymation style, but it was a mashup to me of like Robot Chicken, Harley Quinn, and like Rick and Morty. Like you're getting like the kind of mystical science elements of like Rick and Morty and like kind of these grand adventures that happen. You're getting kind of like this supervillain take on things a la like Harley Quinn. And then obviously the claymation and honestly the comedic stylings of
Robot Chicken.
Of Robot Chicken, because again, Seth Green and his production company were executive producers on the show. And so you're kind of getting a little bit of that. But it's one of those things that like, and I get it. So ZB's in the chat saying not a big fan of comedy that belittles the protagonist constantly. It's very a la like a Arrested Development, except for the fact that maybe M.O.D.O.K is a little more far gone. He's more reminiscent of like maybe like Job in that case, if Job was the star of Arrested Development and not Michael or oh my god, Jason Bateman. But to that point, what you see throughout the season is M.O.D.O.K get his life together. That's the main element of the story, is that he is a complete train wreck when this starts, and he fully gets his life together by the end. But then we get like a really big twist of how things actually play out, which is, I thought very interesting.
Yes.
So let's just dive right into it. I actually want to go to Dwain first, since he was only able to see the first 2 episodes. The initial story with M.O.D.O.K, he's out here. AIM is invading the Avengers Tower. Iron Man ends up kicking everybody's ass by himself. But M.O.D.O.K considers it a victory because they were able to steal Iron Man's boot. They were like, "Hey, we got it, y'all. We did it. Like, this is all we ever wanted." And people are clowning him, talking about like, "Bro, the only reason you got the boot is because Iron Man kicked it so far up your ass that you ended up running away with it one way or the other." So, Dwain, you see this first episode, and M.O.D.O.K ends up bankrupting AIM, and he has to sell out to like a Google conglomerate. What did you think about this kind of starting off, man?
I thought it was. I wasn't terribly impressed with the first episode, to be 100% honest.
That's fair.
A lot of the jokes didn't land for me. There were a few that I were like, "Oh, that's clever," like the British Bake Off while he's fighting M.O.D.O.K. I thought that was clever. But for the most part, the first episode, I was like, I don't really like this interpretation of the character. It wasn't until the end of the episode when he kind of, after he signs the company over and he has to like figure out how to get it back, that was the part that kind of like finally I was like, okay, I get what they're doing here. But for the first half of the episode, it was kind of lost. I was like, I don't really like this.
That's fair. That's totally fair. What about you, Matt? Just kind of jumping into that first episode. He sells out to Grumble after almost losing AIM. His wife wants a divorce by the end of the episode. Like, where were you at with this?
It sounds like Dwayne and I have a lot of the same issues. Although I will say this: I loved Beck Bennett in it. Beck Bennett was hilarious.
Yeah, he really as Austin, the CEO of Grumble, he is hilarious.
But yeah, otherwise, I know M.O.D.O.K, while he can be a bumbling fool, I don't know him as a complete idiot. Like, complete idiot is he's what's supposed to be one of the smartest beings in the world, and he's not.
But I get it that he's still super dangerous and deadly and all that, but a lot of the interpretations of M.O.D.O.K is he's super smart, but he's a dumbass. Like he has always been the scientist supreme type. Like I can essentially as smart, if not smarter, maybe than Tony Stark. Like right in that area, like of debating about who's on top of whom. But his hubris has always been so ridiculous that he does come off as a jackhole. You know what I'm saying? That like they just took it to an extreme in this show for sure.
Yeah, the extreme is kind of what I had the issue with.
Mm-hmm.
But as you watch as you continue watching the show, it kind of grows on you and you get used to it, and that's why I liked it as much as I did. But for that first episode, it was just like, how is this gonna play out? How is this gonna work out? Is he just gonna be this way the entire time? And the character growth that you get from him throughout the rest of the series, along with that, is why it's able to work.
Right.
But
right. Well, you get this setup. What they do a good job with the first episode is setting up the story of how the rest is going to play out. Him having to deal with Grumble and Austin. Him having to deal with the fact that he still wants to try and conquer the world, but now he has to kind of do it while in the corporate system. And most importantly, he messes up so bad because like his wife has a book deal and he ends up like hijacking her body, ruining something she personally has been working towards. So she ends up wanting a divorce from him. And so now all of a sudden he has to deal with that. And so this next episode, the second one, I actually love this episode a lot. It's one of my favorite ones. The M.O.D.O.K that time forgot, he really does not want to get divorced. So he convinces Jody, look, he does that thing that we all do when we're not ready to break up, where you lie and go, let's go see this thing just as friends. I'm not trying to hit on you. I'm not trying to salvage this, but we always said we were going to go to this concert. In this case, they missed the Third Eye Blind concert that was supposed to come to their college, which is kind of hilarious that's what they were trying to get at. So they end up going back in time. They get a nice little kind of like time romp that ends up happening. They eventually find out the reason why they didn't make it to the concert is because Jody was pregnant. That was the whole reason. But in the process, M.O.D.O.K ends up meeting a younger version of himself, and younger M.O.D.O.K is not. He's like, dude, what the hell happened to you? Which is also part of why I think I appreciate this episode. Made me appreciate the show and where it was going more, because the M.O.D.O.K y'all were expecting is the younger M.O.D.O.K, and he's like, what the hell, bruh? Like, we were going to rule the world. We were going to destroy all the people that were in our way, and we were going to become the emperor of the world and change things. Like, how did we become this? And so young M.O.D.O.K gets to see all that happening, and it's like, oh my God, it's the family. And there's a fight that ensues. He ends up accidentally smashing the time machine crystals into young M.O.D.O.K's brain. So now we can also tell the difference between, I mean, you can tell anyway because he looks younger. Yeah. But now young M.O.D.O.K has the ability to time travel, which comes into play later in the season. But to me, this episode was the beginning of seeing exactly how that all happens. We all have that dream of being a doctor, being an actor, being a fireman, like when we're 15, 20, 25. But then you wake up at 35 and you're like, what happened? How did I get to this? Was not where I had my mindset. How did I end up in this particular place? And that's kind of where this continues on. In that third episode, still trying to get, he thought he was being invited as a guest of honor to a conference. Turns out that he was the guest of honor and that they were honored to make sure he has the most improvement, which is kind of shady. But he starts to try and bond with his daughter about how he can essentially mean girl his way to being the most popular person in the room. It backfires when he decides to go off script and ignore his daughter, and he tries to summon the Brood to murder everybody. But in actuality, what he ended up doing is bringing these creatures called the Kleegramites, who just party. Like, do you remember that Key and Peele sketch, Dwayne, where you had LMFAO, like they were like, and we don't stop partying, we're always gonna party, and we never stop partying, we party all the time. It's like that as creatures. But
like
they
these
make
turtle-looking things, these turtle-looking
weird
slugs.
turtle slug-looking things. But as they party, you end up dying because they're like, "Come on, man, you can live lower than that. Let's do it." And then your spine breaks. Or it's like, "Come on, we've only had sex 100 times. Let's do it again." It's like, "I don't have any fluid left in my body." Like, it's just partying to the extreme. But you know, we get more and more of these adventures. Like there's that. We get one where M.O.D.O.K isn't allowed to hang out with the cool supervillains, so he ends up hanging out with all these C-listers,
Melter,
the Melter and all that. And that's where you get a lot of these human elements.
Yeah.
Like he bonds with this older supervillain named Melter, who keeps coughing up blood the whole episode. And at the very end, I don't remember what movie that's originally from, but like they're all sitting on the beach and he's like, "Hey, Melter, we gotta go." Melter. And then Melter just kind of drops over dead. And like that's the end of that episode. And it kind of goes into there. So, you know, watching these as these adventures unfold, like Matt, like what did it change your thoughts on the show at all since we're getting more story?
Yeah, that's ultimately what ended up being the switch for me. I'm like, all right, we're getting more of the human element. It's that's the growth I was talking about, because you that third episode specifically doesn't have a great relationship with his kid. They neither of them wanted to come to his new apartment after the split, and his son was content with playing with the rats when he got the call to be like, "Hey, you got to come to this conference," and the rats are climbing all over his son. And he's like, "All right, we're gonna go because this is just no." And
yeah,
seeing how his daughter is more like him and the son is more like the mother, is just, it's a nice balance. And the daughter's seriously twisted, and that's what really caught my attention. I love she does that mean girl thing where she's like, you have to identify what's their weakness. Look, that guy's he's wearing a bigger pair of pants and his belt's really tight. That means he recently lost weight and he's still insecure about it. So go talk to the other. I was
talk to everybody else about how they stay in shape. That messed me up. That messed me up so hard. And then he went to he's like, "Oh, that woman over there, she clearly waxes her eyebrows. So like make a comment about like, do you need to borrow my razor?" And she's like, "Wait, what? I gotta
borrow my tweezers." That's what.
No, borrow my tweezers. She's like, why would I need that? Or like that guy is constantly making jokes, meaning that he's really trying to be funny, but he's not. So next time he says something, just be like, eh. It's just like I was like, yo, this is horrible. But it was genius in that way. It's a new way to kind of show supervillainy, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like the fact that his daughter being a teenager, sure, she has some violent tendencies that we see later, but for her supervillainy is to prey on people's insecurities. Like I was like, yo, that's genius. But yeah, what would you say was your favorite episode of the whole season, man? Like we'll keep going through them, but like what was the one that really stuck out to you?
It's either the one where it's the murder game.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Or the episode after that. I remember those two were the ones that like really stuck out for me.
Yeah. Of course. So some of the other adventures that we get, because I do want to get to that. You have we talked about him hanging out with the D-list supervillains.
Yeah.
There's an episode where his rival in AIM, Monica, has to take vacation days and she doesn't want to. So
she
teams up with M.O.D.O.K to try and overthrow Grumble, but ultimately gets it to that she becomes the scientist supreme by double crossing him. Also, we find out that the company behind Grumble, Hexis, is actually a living alien hive mind that comes and makes people spend all their money till all the resources are gone and the planet's destroyed. They bounce. So we find out about them. We have they need to get Lou ready for his bar mitzvah, but he keeps doing magic.
And they go to
and
Asgard.
M.O.D.O.K is really, yeah. So, M.O.D.O.K accidentally drops him into Asgard, worried that he's going to get eaten by kobold goblins, but, having to save him from that. You had one where M.O.D.O.K gets a makeover because he finds out.
That was hilarious.
It was also super twisted, man.
Yeah.
Because his ex-wife Jody, they haven't finalized the divorce yet, but she started dating Wonder Man, played by Nathan Fillion, which is hilarious.
Yes.
She starts using Wonder Man and M.O.D.O.K in order to get her book to the #1 bestseller list. And so dates Wonder Man for the fame, then convinces M.O.D.O.K to come to the premiere, making him think that they have a chance to get back together, but it's only so that he'll create drama and whatnot. And then you get this moment where Wonder Man is really upset and is like, I actually cared about you, Jody, but you just used me and the chaos between me and your ex-husband to get what you wanted. You're more like your ex-husband than you realize. And so it's at this point that all of a sudden now we get young M.O.D.O.K coming into the fray. He kidnaps the whole family. And M.O.D.O.K thinks that he actually has gotten back together with his family, but they haven't. They're all robots. And you get Arcade, a very famous Marvel villain. Specifically, I think he mainly is Spider-Man, but he's worked or gone up against everyone at some point or another. Puts them in this kind of fun house game where they're robot clones of everyone, and then they have to kill two of the 3 iterations and hope that they're robots. And they end up very quickly just murdering all the clones and figuring out who the real family members are, except for the boy. So Lou ends up now having he's now a twin, an identical twin, because they decided to let them keep that robot, which was fun. You had M.O.D.O.K finally decide, you know what, I just got to start over and try this a different way. And so he ends up being a good mailman in AIM's thing, and ultimately
good employee overall.
Just overall, he ends up, but people think he's up to something because he's being so good. But it ultimately ends up being a situation where he's able to let AIM go and start his own company, AIM 2, but also let AIM crash and burn, which kind of stops. He ends up screwing over Iron Man in the process. He ends up screwing over Grumble in the process. It was actually a brilliant stroke. Wonder Man, he screwed everybody at the same time, which was kind of amazing. And then we get this final episode, and to me, this was the thing where I was already on board and enjoying the show, but this took it to another level. Because we get the bar mitzvah, same kind of goofy humor we've gotten the whole season, but then we find out that the young M.O.D.O.K that we thought we had killed a couple episodes ago is still alive. And he shows our main M.O.D.O.K, yo, here's the thing. By you going about the way that you are, you spend most of your years dying, typically on the toilet, eating a child's party-sized lasagna is how it's described, right? But all of your dreams, all of your aspirations are gone, and there is only one. There was one out of a million different instances where you actually get it right, and you take over the world, and you become Emperor M.O.D.O.K, and you do change the world for the better. And the one that it happens, he's like, it was your family that did it because they died. The minute they died, that pushed you to a place that no one could stop you, that gave you the edge over the Avengers, that gave you the edge over all the other villains. You become Emperor M.O.D.O.K because of it. And so we sit here, and young M.O.D.O.K goes, so what's it going to be? I know you can't kill them, but I can, and that will allow you to do what you need to do. And we're sitting here, and we're like, M.O.D.O.K's changed this whole show. He wouldn't sacrifice his family. And we cut to M.O.D.O.K has sacrificed. He let young M.O.D.O.K kill his family, but he's also imprisoned young M.O.D.O.K. And we realize that this whole show was Emperor M.O.D.O.K using the time powers that he has to see through this portal and spend time with his family, but also planning on wanting to try and figure out. He keeps telling him, you can't have it all. And on top of that, he's like, sir, if you use him again to do this, you're gonna kill him. The young M.O.D.O.K doesn't have any energy left. If you use him again, he's gonna die. He's like, I don't give a shit. There's my second one. Jesus Christ.
I was about to say, you've been just.
I just been going off just because I just been, this whole show is so graphic. I can't help myself. And we just get this moment where we're like, holy crap, there's the supervillain. He did sacrifice his family. And now that ego is kicking in where he's like, I will find a way to have my family and my Emperor City. And that's the cliffhanger we get left on is he actually going to figure this out? But we essentially, I think what is so beautiful, the whole point of telling a story, obviously, is to see character growth. I think there is also something very important to show when someone has done all of that growth over the course of a season, but we see at their core, sometimes they can't be changed. And so part of that story is the actual lack of growth, how a lot of the times it was more on a shallow end of things. And so, like, what was your feelings when we get to seeing that M.O.D.O.K actually really just cares about taking over the world and nothing else?
Well, really quick, that transition that they used was gorgeous, because you had the younger M.O.D.O.K pose a question, and you just focus on M.O.D.O.K's face, and we see it fade into the Emperor M.O.D.O.K, and how the Emperor M.O.D.O.K doesn't even look that happy. It looks like he's unfulfilled, even though he did everything he wanted to do. There's just something's not there, and he looks and feels empty, and we learned that through him looking back at his family and what he had, and him wanting to have both. And that's the scene. Because like I said, overall I enjoyed it, but that was a scene that told me, like, okay, I can take more of this. I would have been fine if this was a single season and it ended right there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a scene like, no, I want to see how this progresses, because the younger M.O.D.O.K just died. You tortured him to the point that he's now dead. The crystals in him can't be used. Right. So how are you gonna be able to try to find the way to have it all if you've just lost the ability to time travel? Period.
Right.
So
exactly.
So that's what I'm really interested in seeing going forward, especially when we get to season 2. If we get to season 2, because I don't know if they signed off on multiple seasons right away. I don't know how I haven't really heard many people talk about this show.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of it having to do with, again, sometimes you don't get as big of a boost depending on which streaming platform. So, like, for example, 80 Brian Shrill that came out, their final season came out and whatnot, and it's a great show. Not nerdy, but I'm just bringing up as an example. The only Hulu shows that have like blown up were like Little Fires Everywhere and Handmaid's Tale.
Runaways for a little bit too.
Sorta.
The first season, not the second. First season.
And it doesn't mean that they aren't great shows, but you know what I'm saying? No, it doesn't end up being like, boom, here it is in your face type situation. It's just never been Hulu. They're trying. They're certainly trying, but it's never been Hulu's thing. So I think given some time and as it continues to be talked about, I think that there's a possibility, because it does, last check, it looks like it had an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Let me double check and make sure that that's still the case. So you do have a lot of critics that are like messing with it. Marvel's M.O.D.O.K. It's sitting at 86%. Now, interestingly enough, it is at a 67% from the audience. So I think you're also getting people are kind of mixed on it. You know what I'm saying? That hasn't dropped into like full on like the rotten land where like less than half of people are messing with it. But like it's a well done show, but it does take a little bit of patience. You know what I'm saying? Like it does take a little patience to get through that first episode. And once you get to the second one, things start to kind of roll. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. And I think ultimately, and I say this whenever a show decides to drop the entire season at once, it brings up the conversation of, is a show better off dropping it all at once or just going weekly? I mean, that's the big argument to be had with anything nowadays.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it depends. I would argue if I feel like your show is stronger, you want to have them keep coming back every week. And if it's weaker, though, that's not necessarily the model that follows. But if it's weaker, then you want to drop it all at once. I'll tell you this: if they had dropped Jupiter's Legacy, for example, an episode at a time, I
You
would
would've
have just
checked out.
stopped after like an episode. I've been like, I'm good. That's okay. But I powered through, one, for the show, but two, because they were just all there. So I was like, fine, I will just see how this ends and kind of go through this. I kind of do the same with M.O.D.O.K, because you needed to get to that second episode. At the very least, if you were going to do that, you need to release maybe the first 2 to 3 episodes, and then if you want to do 1 or 2 afterwards, that would work. But yeah, what did?
Uh-oh.
No, I just got a message over here
From Dwain.
Yeah. What am I looking at, man?
You're looking at the full cast announcement for Netflix's Sandman.
Oh, okay, word. I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay, great. So, we got our cast for the Sandman. We have Kirby Howell Baptiste as Death, Mason Alexander Park as Desire, Donna Preston as Despair, Razane Jamal as Lita Hall, Jolie Richardson as Ethel Cripps, Naima Walsh as young Ethel Cripps, David Thewlis as John D, Kil Ra as Rose Walker, Patton Oswald as Matthew the Raven, Stephen Fry as Gilbert, Jenna Coleman as Johanna Constantine, and Sandra James Young as Unity Kincaid. Wow, this is a pretty stacked like cast of because this is also an animated show, is it not?
No, it's not. It's live action, if I remember.
It's live action?
This is live action.
Oh, wow. Well, damn, that's going to be ridiculous, man.
Yeah, because the only when you look at it, the only person that has a voice next to their name is Patton Oswalt to voice Matthew the Raven. Everybody else is
right.
Stephen Fry is Gilbert. Jenna Coleman is Johanna Constantine.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It
is live action, and excuse me, with we already know a few other cast members that aren't on this list. One of whom being Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer,
right,
and then
Tom Sturridge.
Yeah, and with Johanna Constantine being announced now, there's a possibility we see a new John Constantine as well.
Yeah, that's also true. That is also very, very true. Which can't wait to see that. I mean, like that's the thing though, is, you know, this is like a fun story out of DC Comics, like an intense story out of DC Comics. And I know that they've been talking about trying to get this done for a while, haven't they?
Yeah, sure.
Like mid to 2010s, I want to say, is they've been trying to get this off the ground, and so they finally, Netflix moved in to produce the deal in June of 2019, and obviously, COVID slowed everything down, but we are fully moving forward here, and it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. Which that actually reminds me, I was trying to figure out what we do for next week. I think the last bit of Lucifer drops this week on Netflix, which might actually work to. Yeah, are you a fan of the show too, Dwain?
Look, all I'm saying is
you may not need a guest next week.
No, that's not what I was going to say. What I was actually going to say is, we all know God is black. Doesn't matter what universe, doesn't matter what property, God is black.
Amen. Look, all I'm saying is like, Morgan Freeman was a dope god, man. He really was. Like, he handled his business in Bruce Almighty. So I'm very excited to see, because it's what's his name is playing him, is the dude, the Allstate, are you in good hands, like president from 24. Why is his name escaping me right now?
Pedro Serrano from
Dennis Haysbert.
There you go.
Dennis Haysbert. There it is. Dennis Haysbert. Yeah, because he's playing God this season, isn't he?
Yeah, he was revealed as. So, let's see, that's season 4 that they're on now. So up until the break, we had not seen or heard from God the entire show, and then they finally revealed God in the last 10 seconds of the episode, and I was like, yes.
Well, no, for sure. I think that because it drops on Friday, so I definitely think this next season of Lucifer will be what we talk about next week before we get into Loki the following week. But let's come back to M.O.D.O.K real quick, and then we'll take any super chats or streamlabs that have come through. Overall thoughts, Matt. Just like a kind of a final thing, and if you had to rate it out of, let's say, 10, what would you give it?
Entertaining story. Comedy lands flat at times. Overall, if I had to rate it, 6.5 out of 10. It's
Okay.
good enough to keep me interested going into a possible season 2, and we'll see from there.
Fair. I'll bump it up about a number. I'll give it a 7.5 just because of the story. I think that the thing that prevents it from me going the distance, like say a Harley Quinn, is that Harley Quinn was able to give you the story, the character development, and the comedy. Like I was laughing my ass off the entirety of Harley Quinn, and I can't speak higher of that show and what it did, but I am really impressed by the story that they told here, by the character development we got here. But I agree, this is if you're not a big Robot Chicken fan, because it does ring very similar comedy stylings, then it's one of those things that you may be on board, sometimes you may not. And that was kind of what happened here, is sometimes I actually did find myself laughing out loud at the show, and other times I was like, okay, you know what I mean? Like it kind of did that. But I want to ask y'all again, the question of the day is, what supervillain would you like to see have their own show? We got Harley Quinn, we got M.O.D.O.K. Who's next on deck? So send in those streamlabs and super chats for that. Dwayne, let's go ahead and read what we have so far, if we have any, so.
So far, we don't have any, but there's one more INNERGEEKDOM-esque related story that I would like to just bring up real quick.
Yeah, of course, man. That's good.
Howard University just announced that their newly established College of Fine Arts, led by Dean Felicia Rashad, will be named the Chadwick A. Boseman College of Fine Arts.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing, and it's funny because if I remember the story correctly, Chadwick actually received, at Felicia's request, from Denzel a scholarship through Howard's program over there, which is amazing, absolutely phenomenal. And I can't think of a more deserving person, not only with his acting ability and what he did for the community, but just what he means to Black actors everywhere, especially ones that come out of the HBCUs. Matt, what do you think about when you hear this news, man?
I'm trying not to cry hearing it, honestly, because there's very few actors that have had an impact on me like Chadwick Boseman did. I've seen in right after the
you froze up for me a little bit. I don't know if it was me or if it was
okay. When he's just after he's been called the N-word numerous times and everything, that, and he had his brain tricky talk to him about, you better, just when he snaps the bat and just lets out that primal scream of anger. That's always been that moment for Chadwick for me, and that's whenever somebody talks about how great of an actor he is, that's
right. So, no, for sure, man. I mean, he was just something very special, not just with his ability, but in the way that there's a lot of actors that you watch them act and you can't fully always separate them from the role they're playing. You're like, oh, that's like, I love me some Denzel, and sometimes there are roles that Denzel kind of loses himself in the role and it works out. But for the most part, if you're watching a Denzel movie, you're like, it's Denzel doing this now, it's Denzel doing that now. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, not knocking anything, but you know what I'm saying? Chadwick, he genuinely fully transformed into whatever role he was playing. I was able to fully separate James Brown from Thurgood Marshall, from T'Challa, Jackie Robinson. They were all so vastly different.
To be
that person, to bring so many iconic characters to life like that. And to have the wherewithal and the grace that he did. You would hear him in interviews. You would see what he knew he meant to kids as, you know, the like one of the first major black superheroes to get that kind of shine. um it never gets easier to talk about the fact that he's gone, man, because it just was so caught out of left field. So this is an absolute beautiful honor, and I'm so grateful that they did this. Anything from you, Dwayne, at all, on the subject?
I mean, not just um, Chadwick, but Felicia Rashad as well. Like,
Hmm.
because her mentorship is a big reason why we got Chadwick and the
Right.
version of him that we received. Um, and to have her be in charge of a college of fine arts at, I mean, arguably the largest, you know, HBCU in the world,
Hmm.
that is going to, I would say that's probably going to, in 10 years time, we're going to be looking at the program that gives us all of the best black actors
Hmm.
in the world,
Hmm.
and it's going to be because of both of them,
Right.
because of the legacy of Chadwick and the
Right.
mentorship of Felicia Rashad.
Right. No, I completely agree, man. I think that is something that we definitely will end up seeing coming out of that program, which is a beautiful thing. And to know that it's in Chadwick's honor like that is pretty big deal. Oh Lord, sorry, I'm a little getting emotional myself. All right, if we don't have any super chats or streamlabs, I see a couple of people throwing a couple of villains over there. What we got: Carnage, Doctor Doom, Magneto, Magnus, Darkseid, Slade, Red Hood. These are all some really good suggestions for sure. Um, I would love to see. I mean, what about you? What Matt? What villain would you really like to see a show of, man?
Venom, because my boy has been massacred in almost every medium except Spider-Man the animated series.
Dang, tell us how you really feel, bruh. I,
Yeah.
I would personally love to see, like, I know we obviously have the Suicide Squad um already as like a movie franchise, but I would actually love to see like an Amanda Waller show. I feel like that could be really interesting in the same way that like she's like a slightly more cutthroat Nick Fury in a way, you know what I'm saying? And she's like willing to work with villains instead of heroes type stuff. I would love to see like a Waller show. I think would be really kind of interesting to play out. Almost like a Breaking Bad version of like Spies, sort of. You know what I mean? Dwayne?
Uh, this is hard. Probably, yeah, Deathstroke or Slade Wilson. That, I mean, it's hard with villains because, like, the suggestion of Red Hood. Red Hood is a great story, but because you don't have all of the information. But if the show's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
about Red Hood, like, you're gonna have too much information.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but that's kind of the point is because, like, we didn't know about Modoc like having a family beforehand, but they like added that as an element to like kind of, give him something more grounded in it. So, like, what if that's the whole thing is that like Red Hood um comes back and obviously he's got his even more vigilante side of justice where he's willing to kill people. So Bruce is like, bro, you don't get none of my money. So you're gonna have to get a job if you're gonna afford all these toys and whatnot. So like he works at like a diner or something, and then he like sees people get beat up, so he's like, all right, I'm gonna go kill somebody. Like if that's like kind of how he, funds his thing is he has to work at a diner. I don't know. That could be like kind of an interesting, fun thing to see what his life is like outside of just murdering mob bosses and whatnot. Yeah. Neither of you seem very impressed by my idea.
No, it's not. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, it's not a bad idea. I'm just because I'm thinking if Bruce isn't going to fund him, that means he's got to pay for a lair, his actual apartment. Like I'm like,
all I'll say is, you know what it almost feels like with Bruce and Jason in that regard is like, especially once he finds out who it is, it almost feels like, well, I was a bad dad, so I guess maybe I should still throw some money your way, to try and make up for it type of situation.
If anything, this is just making me wish we got the one show that would have been like this from Donald Glover, and that was the Deadpool show.
Yeah, that Deadpool show did sound like it was going to be pretty good. I hate that kind of fell, because that was supposed to be over at FX where he's doing Atlanta, right? And it just fell apart.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And apparently they had episodes done already, and it's just like, nope, cut it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks, but it happens, man. It definitely happens. So either way, we've kind of we've gone into M.O.D.O.K, we talked about all that, we covered all the nerdy news. So if we don't have any Streamlabs or super chats, I'm gonna go ahead and say we wrap it up. Matt, tell them all the stuff you got going on, man, and what's going on next for you.
So you can find me over at Watt Real Entertainment. We do movie reviews. We have all this different content, whether it be our Schmoedown after show spin from the Real, our show Really Scared, hosted by Taylor Cleek, who is an advocate for the Rager, and just all this fun stuff. So go check out what I do there. So yeah. Dope. Oh, I'm writing for the FCL.
Writing for the FCL to Tuesdays still, right? Yes. What time does it go live on Tuesdays?
3 p.m. PST.
That's what's up. And Dwain, what about you, man?
You can find me anywhere and everywhere on the internet at Burke Made. You can find me engineering the FCL, running the switches and keeping the lights on. And you can please check out my YouTube channel, my show Technical Difficulties, where I walk you through some technical stuff and show you how to make your live streams and your shows a little bit better. And check out my Patreon. I've got something really big coming in July. I'm going to be starting an OBS masterclass. It's going to be set up like a legit masterclass. Once a week, there will be a video lesson released, and then there will be office hours once a week where I can help you with any questions that you don't have answered in the video. So please stay tuned for that and check it out.
I just gotta say, my favorite part of Technical Difficulties is you in like your 3-piece suit, the teal 3-piece suit for the logo, bruh. Like just kind of setting that tone. I was like, I brother with some class talking about, I'm gonna teach your punk ass how to do this. Love it, man. Absolutely love it. Myself, I'm the Swaggy Blurred. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. You can also find me in about 7 minutes right here on this channel, SCN Live, going off. You don't want to miss it. I'll be hosting today. I actually have a really fun game that I got inspired to do. Now that we know, y'all brought up Chadwick being honored in HBCUs, I was like, all right, I got an idea that we can play today. So we're going to do that for sure. You don't want to miss it. We're going to do this similar to what we've done in the past, where based off how many donations we get, we'll have a new part of the game unveiled. So definitely check it out. Before we get out of here, I want to make sure that y'all, most of you are big Schmoedown fans that are here, so you do not want to miss this Friday. The pay-per-view goes down. It's a #1 contender match between the former 2-time teams champion Corruption and the new super team made up of Dan Murrell and Ben Bateman, Danger Zone. They are going head-to-head in a #1 contender match to see who will take on, the reigning champs, however that whole thing plays out. The main event is going to be a team's title match, maybe, but we don't really know. We're not quite sure what's going to happen. because we did get some news that's going on with the Odd Couple. You guys need to check it out. I don't want to ruin any surprises for you, but you need to check that out and find out what's going on and how that whole thing is going to play out. So do not miss it. $10 if you want to buy it straight out from Schmoedown Live. Or sorry, if you're a $10 patron, you get that for free as part of your package, or you can go to schmoedownlive.com and go get your tickets and pay for the individual pay-per-view itself. So you don't want to miss it. So Dwayne, go ahead and hit that music, sir. Thank you so much to my guest, Matt Thomas, for coming through talking M.O.D.O.K. Appreciate having you here, brother.
Thank you for having me, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Dwayne, thank you so much for holding it down. And to all you wonderful fans out there, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the INNERGEEKDOM Show. Next week, we talk about the next season of Lucifer that is dropping this Friday. And then after that, it's Loki time, baby. So much love to you all. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you at SCN Live in about 5 minutes. Deuces.